Welcome to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome into Soccer Morning. Almost screwed up the name of the show on World Soccer Talk. Big Monday episode of the program for you. Hope you had a wonderful soccer weekend or football or calcio or whatever you call it. However you spell it, whatever form it takes. Well, we usually talk about the outdoor form on the big field with the grass. Sometimes it's turf, but most of the time it's grass. We don't really talk about indoor. Should we open up the floor and talk a little indoor soccer, a little futsal here? I think there was some playoffs in indoor soccer. There's a couple of people I follow on Twitter who are still interested in that. I never got into indoor soccer. I know it's fast paced and it's like 3-pointers, right? Somebody needs to explain indoor soccer to me because it seems to be a solely American phenomenon, and we're still doing it somehow. It's still going on, despite the fact that we have MLS and NASL and USL and all of these other things happening. Speaking of MLS, today's program will be MLS heavy. Our friend Kyle McCarthy from Fox Soccer will join us to talk about the MLS weekend. Lots and lots of storylines. It starts perhaps with David Villa and NYCFC debuting there at Yankee Stadium in front of 43,000 people, but also includes some bad refereeing, some decisions that changed games. We'll talk about those things. We'll talk about some good teams in terms of FC Dallas, maybe the Columbus Crew and their win over TFC, which is where one of the questionable calls occurred. And to get the insight that's needed on New York City FC starting life at home in front of that big crowd with a win over New England, Rafael Noboa y Rivera will join us. He is the managing editor at Hudson River Blue at SB Nation, the blog that covers that team for that blog network. He does excellent work over there. We can do headlines now. That's what we should do now. I'll start again with MLS. David Villa scoring a goal, setting up a goal for Patrick Mullins in a city win. I can't call them New York. There's already a New York team. Maybe I'll get into some of that a little bit later. David Villa, an excellent performance, obviously coming off of a questionable performance against Orlando, although a lot of that was about service, the inability of the team to get him the ball. They obviously fixed some of those issues, perhaps brought on by New England's deficiencies. But a wonderful day out at Yankee Stadium. The pitch held up relatively well. It wasn't pretty. It was short. It was narrow. It was a little short. By the way, that the narrowness of that field at Yankee Stadium, necessitated by the space restraints, obviously, 70 yards, the smallest allowed under FIFA regulations, but not the only 70-yard wide field in MLS. And I'm sorry, the only source I have right now, if Wikipedia is to be believed. I don't know. Did Houston widen their field when Dom Kinnear left? Because that man was notorious for wanting a very narrow field. And when I checked on these stats, Houston also had a 70-yard wide field. Maybe they've changed that now. Maybe Owen Coyle wants a little bit more width down there in Houston. So if that's changed, let me know. But NYCFC is obviously playing on a small field. It did not hurt them too much. May have hurt New England. Other results around the league. Again, we'll talk about all of this with Kyle McCarthy in just a little bit. But you had Columbus beating TFC 2-0 with that questionable penalty call against Justin Morrow. You had a fantastic game out in Utah. Philadelphia and Real Salt Lake drawing 3-3. Although that game, probably some Union fans feeling aggrieved about that game today. Very questionable penalty called on Maurice Adu that gave Real Salt Lake the opportunity to draw level in that game and get a point out of it. You had San Jose shocking Seattle just a bit. I'm not sure anybody had that game picked that way, especially when Clint Dempsey scores 18 seconds into the match. I'm not sure if that was the fastest goal, maybe the fastest goal in Seattle history. Like third fastest MLS history, something like that. The Premier League had a full weekend as well. City falling to Burnley. Good on Burnley, helping their chances of staying up in the Premier League this season. Meanwhile, City takes a big hit in terms of the Premier League title race. You would think that Chelsea is feeling pretty good, but then they went and split the points this weekend with Southampton 1-1 at Stamford Bridge. I know that Jose Mourinho's out there saying that Arsenal's still in the title race. They had a big win, 3-0 over West Ham. I don't believe that for a second. This is Jose. I mean, look, he can't say, and any coach would be reticent to say that his team's going to win the title at this point. But he's got to know the inside track belongs to Chelsea. 64 points. Manchester City on 58. Arsenal 1 point back of City on 57. And then Manchester United, who also had a big win this weekend over Tottenham, is on 56. Great game by United. A great performance by United. The kind of thing that gives you, if you're a United fan, gives you hope that they can actually put something together here, lock up one of those Champions League spots. It hasn't been an easy season. It may not be easy the rest of the way. And I haven't looked at their fixture list, but I imagine you're feeling pretty good if you're a United fan today. I mentioned Sunderland. Well, maybe I didn't. Villa crushed Sunderland, and Gus Poyet lost his job because of it, or because of poor results in general. And in that vein, thought I'd take a look at the odds on who might be the next Sunderland manager. Dick Advocaat, 8 to 15 odds, very short odds there. He's the big favorite. Sam Allardyce 13 to 2, Michael Laudrup 13 to 2. This is all from Paddy Power, by the way, not to give them a free plug. Harry Redknapp 10 to 1, Neil Lennon 12 to 1, Glenn Hoddle, and then down there all at 16 to 1. So not great odds, but still. Ben Olsen. What? Ben Olsen, DC United's head coach, on this list. And ahead of guys like Bob Bradley, who's always connected to these England jobs at the lower level. 33 to 1, Bob Bradley. Also 33 to 1, Bruce Arena. So there's your American connection. I don't think any of those guys are getting that job, but there they are listed anyway if you want to throw down a bet. The United States U17s beat Jamaica on penalties to advance, or to lock up their place, rather, in the 2015 U17 World Cup in Chile later this year. It wasn't easy for the U17s, and we can talk about whether or not they're making progress, whether they should be getting into the World Cup by the skin of their teeth and doing it against Jamaica. But Richie Williams and this team got the job done. Very happy for the kids, and happy for Richie Williams, who is a guy that seems to have a bright future in terms of coaching, but again, questionable throughout this tournament, not as dominant as you would like to see them. I was going to talk about this Zlatan Ibrahimovic story. I'm not sure there's a whole lot here, apparently bashing the French a little bit in a post-game press conference or post-game comments, and then having to backtrack because, hey, you can't insult the country in which you play. Something about PSG, the French don't deserve PSG, et cetera, et cetera. Really? Okay. In Spain, Gareth Bale scored twice in a Real Madrid 2-0 win over Levante. Big win for Real Madrid, puts them within 1 point of Barcelona ahead of El Clasico this coming weekend. And speaking of that, if you're looking to get in on La Liga or you want to see El Clasico, this is what you need to do. You need to go to www. Why do I say that? Dishworld.com. I don't need the www, do I? Do we still do that? Empty domains to work, right? Go check out Dishworld anyway. You get you not only get beIN Sport, which is where you'll find El Clasico, but you also get One World Sport, which, as far as I know, is the only place to see the New York Cosmos play. So check that out. It's an awesome streaming service. I've tried it out many times myself. This is not just something I'm coming up with without having reviewed this myself. So there you go. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get further into those MLS results. Kyle McCarthy from Fox Soccer, Inside MLS over there. He'll give us his take on all of the weekend's happenings. It's Soccer Morning, brought to you by WorldSoccerTalk.com.
You're talking too loud, but I can't hear you calling.
Every soccer fan in the world knows that the biggest match of the year is El Clasico between Barcelona and Real Madrid. It's your chance to witness Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, and more of the greatest players in the world. The best way to watch is with Dish World and their exclusive broadcast from beIN Sports. Dish World is the #1 live international TV service in the U.S. It's a safe and legal streaming service that delivers your favorite sports and more to your TV, tablet, phone, and computer. For just $10 a month, you can watch El Clasico, plus La Liga, Serie A, and Copa America, as well as the New York Cosmos, Chelsea TV, Arsenal TV, and others with One World Sports and more top networks offered by Dish World. There's no commitment, no annual contract, and no satellite dish needed. Don't miss El Clasico on Sunday, March 22nd. Sign up today at www.dishworld.com. Hey there, it's Jason Davis, and if you're like me and love playing fantasy soccer games, I want to let you know about a fantastic new game called Draft11.com. This is not your usual fantasy soccer game. Draft11.com is different for two major reasons. First, it's a daily fantasy soccer game, and second, it gives you an opportunity to win cash. So instead of playing an entire season and competing against, say, the 3 million people who play Fantasy Premier League and winning nada, you can play Draft11.com over one match day against up to 10 people. And if your team wins, you win. Cash, not points. So go ahead and support our new sponsor that's helping bring Soccer Morning to you every single day. Head over to Draft11.com, sign up for a free account, and take a shot at trying to win some cold, hard cash. Thanks.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we go, talking MLS week number 2 with Kyle McCarthy from Fox Soccer inside MLS. Hi, Kyle.
Hi, Jason. How are you?
How are you? I heard it was cold. You were at Yankee Stadium for NYCFC and the New England Revolution yesterday, and I heard it was cold up there. It was a lovely day here in D.C. Was it a little chilly in the press box?
It was a little frigid, but what I did was I managed to get through it. I wrote really quickly to keep those fingers working, and then I went to Shake Shack after.
Yeah, I saw you tweeting.
I feel like that makes everything better.
I saw you tweeting about that. Capping off an interesting day. Certainly not good for the team that you cover up on your beat in New England, but a great day for NYCFC. David Villa showing us, showing all of that ability and showing us why NYCFC made him their first high-profile signing. Could it have gone better? I mean, it certainly looked like NYCFC was feeling the crowd up there.
It went very well indeed for NYCFC. There were a few hiccups, obviously, and you have to expect that. I mean, there were fans stuck outside the gates for long stretches yesterday, and there were some little flourishes that weren't quite there. But NYCFC took care of business on the field. They managed to survive a real barracking from the Reds in the final 25 minutes in the first half, and somehow found a way through. And they were a better team in the second half and managed to get their inaugural victory.
Yeah, look, I mean, it was 2-0, and Villa was obviously great. Ned Grabavoy with the assist, and then setting up Patrick Mullins, I think that was his first touch, coming on as a substitute. But you also had a lot of missed chances. I mean, this was obviously an early season MLS game. What did you see from NYCFC that was perhaps a little different from what they did last week in Orlando and a game that Villa really wasn't involved?
Yeah, I thought that there were a lot of similarities, but I thought in the second half it was better for them because in the first half they gave too much space to Chris Tierney on the left. They had problems with their defensive spacing. But they made some changes at halftime and fixed that issue, reduced the Revolution's ability to get balls into the box. And if NYCFC can find that solid defensive core and keep that ability to manage possession, I think they'll be in decent shape.
Both Josh Saunders and Bobby Shuttleworth called into action on numerous occasions and acquitted themselves pretty well. Could have been a much bigger scoreline either way. I mean, obviously the Revs will be disappointed not to have gotten away with anything at all, and certainly not to have scored any goals. Lee Wynn was back on the team, but you're still missing Jermaine Jones. And defensively, that's going to be some. There's going to be some question, at least some asking of some questions moving forward. What does Heaps need to do there?
Well, it's tough because you've got a back four that's trying to congeal and trying to find its footing, and you can see that there were still questions about how and when to shift, who and where to step to the ball. And I think that was pretty apparent on that first goal when David Villa starts way out on the left and moves inside. The Reds were a little bit tentative in trying to figure out who should cope with the threat, how they should cut out that 1-2. And those are things that are going to take some time, but it's going to get a little bit more complicated next week with Jose Gonçalves ruled out through suspension.
They're attempting to replace AJ Soares. That's pushed Andrew Farrell into the middle, at least it did yesterday, and brings Alston in on the right side. Is Andrew Farrell a center back, simply put?
Yes, I think he is. I think that's where he projects long term, but he's still getting used to playing center back at the MLS level. And I think that comes with reps, and I think that comes with game situations. I think he'll get there. It's just a matter of figuring out that partnership with Gonçalves and working with that back four to stay connected. It takes a little bit of time, and the Revs, as a defensive unit, aren't there yet.
Is there any reason? I mean, again, it's the second week of the season, Kyle. I mean, a couple of games in the books. You really can't make a whole lot of judgments. They went to Seattle, got thumped. They go to New York in front of a big crowd and very tough atmosphere to try to get a result without Jermaine Jones. Again, I think that's worth mentioning here. And it didn't go so well. But is there any reason to sort of reassess the Revs at this point, and how soon can we expect guys to really get in the rhythm? Juan Agudelo was he had chances, but he missed them.
Yeah, I think it's too early to worry about the Revs at this point, and I think you would start worrying if they weren't creating the chances. But they had a boatload yesterday. They simply just didn't take them. On another day, they win that game 5-2. So for the Revs, I think it's a matter of being patient. They've got a manageable game at home to Montreal, a team that's going to probably be distracted with its CONCACAF Champions League obligations. So I think for the Revs, it's about patience and about trusting in the fact that there's a good squad there and that they'll find a way to get things righted.
Kyle, a lot of things can change between now and playoff time, but if you had to name, and I don't know if this is a power rankings question or not, but if you had to pick who the best team in MLS is right now, who would you say it is?
Oh wow! I mean, how do you pick after Seattle loses to San Jose at home? It's been such a weird couple of weeks that if you got to pinpoint one, I mean, where do you even start? Because
how about this?
It's that crazy, right?
Yeah, but how about I give you a candidate and you tell me why they might not be? FC Dallas.
Okay. FC Dallas has done well over the first 2 weeks. My question is about their identity going forward, because Mauro Diaz has not looked like a great fit in these first 2 weeks. And for FCD to hit its ceiling, I think they need Diaz to play a big part. If they're just going to be that team that holds out, rushes forward on the counter, and then relies on Castillo and Perez, I don't see that team as an MLS Cup winner.
Okay.
But if you add Diaz in there with that little bit of magistry, then maybe something's different there.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, there have been teams in this league who have won on counters and set pieces before, Kyle, but there is a long way to go, as I said. And there's certainly something to be determined there in Dallas, but they did get a pretty impressive win over Sporting Kansas City. Now that we're going to get to some refereeing decisions in the weekend, but there was some of that involved in this game, and certainly Perez was offside when he scored the second FC Dallas goal. So, do you take anything away from that on either end of that matchup? FC Dallas 3-1 winners, or Sporting maybe just not there yet?
Sporting's not there yet, and I think it's clear when you look at how that team has performed over the first 2 weeks. They're still sorting through some issues in midfield. They're still trying to find themselves a little bit. I think they'll get there, but that was not a particularly good performance in Frisco on Saturday.
Also, again, let me come to those refereeing decisions. Again, you had Blas Perez obviously offside. Liesman's flat out missed that. It was like 4 guys for FC Dallas offside on that goal. But the biggest controversies of the weekend were in Columbus and in Salt Lake City. And I'll go first to Columbus. TFC comes in on the high of beating Vancouver. Josie Altidore scores twice. Jovinko looks very, very good. You obviously got Michael Bradley running things in the middle of the field, and some things are clicking a little bit, at least in 1 week. And then you get a red card, 43rd minute red card, I think it was, on Justin Morrow for denial of a goal-scoring opportunity, last man back. I didn't think it was a red card, Kyle. I didn't think it was even a foul necessarily. I don't know how else you make that tackle if you're in that position.
It was a difficult decision, and I thought it was the wrong one. I understand how you can make that call in a split second, and particularly with the positioning of David Gansar, but it was not the correct call, and it really hamstrung TFC. Do I necessarily think the Reds were going to go on and get 3 points from that game?
Right.
I'm not so sure, but it really left them hamstrung, and Columbus really turned the screws in the second half.
Then what do you take away from Columbus's performance? They can feel good about the win. They can feel good about taking down a quote unquote rival, although I'm not sure that goes beyond some fan stuff from a couple years back. But did Columbus show you the kind of things that will make them a playoff contender, maybe even a team that could finish first or second in the East?
I like the ruthlessness in that second half. They knew that Toronto FC was down to 10 men, and they didn't let them off the hook. They got a couple of goals before the hour and really sorted out the game quickly. And Columbus, especially when you look back at that first week performance in Houston, that defeat, sometimes lacks that cutting edge, that nastiness to sort out a game when they need to do so. I thought that was a good first step for them. To take care of business when presented with the opportunity against TFC.
No, look, and it's good to have Kai Kamara on the score sheet, his first goal back in MLS and for the Crew, considering that and obviously Justin Merriman as well. You can't just rely on Federico Higuain chipping a goalkeeper once a game. It's going to have to come from the forwards, the guys playing ahead of him, and Kamara is. I mean, we all look at Kamara as the key. Is it going to be that simple in Columbus based on what happened last year?
It'll be interesting to see whether that is the case or not. I think Kamara helps him a lot because he stretches the field vertically, should provide the midfield with more space to operate, and he's going to get his fair share of goals. He's established in MLS, so a lot of it will rest on his shoulders, yes. And if his celebration game is any indication, then he should be in good shape.
Yeah, he is. Kai Kamara certainly brings it when it comes to celebrations. All right, let me go to the other questionable call, at least the high-profile questionable call, and it was the penalty called on Maurice Adu in Sandy that allowed RSL to get a point out of a match they were losing 3-2 at the time. First, we've seen our share of mistakes already, both from keepers, defenders. Brad Evans had a really bad weekend. Maybe we'll get to that. This game was marked by that, but give Philadelphia credit for taking advantage.
Weird game. Weird game. And it's almost appropriate it was decided by such a awful call. It was just an awful call at the end there to allow Severio to equalize in the late stages, and it's just one of those games where you could just plot out the summary and still look back at it and think, wow, that was just really, really peculiar, and that's what it was.
Well, okay, let me see. I don't want to draw any grand conclusions here, but I'm going to try this. Esther Guieta? I have no idea. Getting on the score sheet a couple of times, obviously brought in to help some of those issues, scoring issues that the Union had last year. Sebastian Letou is going to be industrious Sebastian Letou. He was all over the place. Are they going to get enough out of Maidana, who was pretty good last year, and obviously Andrew Winger on the left to make them a contender for a playoff spot?
Still a big question mark in my mind, whether they're going to get enough out of that duo to keep those supply lines open. For me, the midfield hasn't quite hit top gear in these first 2 weeks. I think that's shown. But if the Union continue to play like they have over the first 2 weeks of the season, I think they'll keep themselves in the discussion. Because when you look at it, they should have 6 points right now.
Yeah.
They were frustrated with refereeing decisions in that first week, with good reason. They were frustrated with referee decisions in the second week with good reason. So it's been an odd way for the Union to open the season, I'd say.
Yeah, and on the other side, RSL defensively, obviously that was a bad performance from them. Hamas Olave is going to want that own goal back, clearly. You have Chris Schuler, who has been an injury concern throughout most of his career. We know he can play. He can, be an MLS quality defender, even a top level one if he's consistently playing. But they've shifted their formation under Jeff Cassar, Kyle, to a 4-3-3, and I don't know. Is that something that's going to fundamentally change how we view RSL? I mean, they've been so tied into that diamond for so long that this seems like an abrupt. Even if it's personnel based, it seems fairly abrupt.
It is a shift, certainly, and RSL, like most teams in this league, is working through it in that first couple of weeks of the season. I thought it was good for Omar Garcia to get on the score sheet. They haven't had enough production from Garcia and Sebastian Jaime over the past year or so. So that was a good sign for them. They're still working through the particularities of the 4-3-3. I think you might see the diamond at some point. At the very least, you could see RSL have a little bit more tactical flexibility than they've had in the past, and that's always a good thing. In terms of RSL defensively, the only thing that I found concerning was the poor work in the build-up out of the back on the first goal. Everything else was sort of fluky, just weird stuff happening. But they've got to be careful if they're going to build up out of the back. They've got to do it with a little bit more care than they did in the build to that first goal.
Speaking of weird stuff happening, Clint Dempsey scored in 18 seconds in Seattle to open up that match against the San Jose Earthquakes. And I think everybody who either saw that goal or heard about that goal thought, okay, Seattle's going to go on and win this game at home over a San Jose Earthquakes team. We don't really know what to expect yet, or what to expect out of yet. And then more mistakes, more weirdness. Chris Wondolowski taking advantage, and here you are, 3-2 winners for San Jose. Is it? Again, it's MLS and it's early in the year. Perhaps shocking is not the right word, but I think Seattle has to be a little upset about this.
A lot upset, I would think. When you score inside the first minute, and you end up losing the game to a 10-man Earthquakes team, I would imagine there was some rancor in that Sounders locker room. But I prefer to focus on the response from San Jose. That's a team that could have certainly succumbed 3 or 4-0 after conceding within the first 20 seconds, and they found it within themselves to get back on level pegging. Find ways to exploit the Sounders defensively, and then ride out the storm when they were down at 10 men in the second half after Victor Bernardes, did what Victor Bernardes does and put his team in a bad spot. Yeah. So it's a good result for the Earthquakes, and it really gives them something to build upon as they get ready to open Avaya Stadium.
And the defense for Seattle, the Brad Evans experiment at center back, I won't say it's a disaster yet, but it certainly hasn't gone well. He looked completely befuddled by San Jose's forward movement. If this doesn't work, and I've seen that Siggy's already on the record saying they'll go out and find a center back. How does that? Brad Evans is a well-respected guy. He's a leader in that locker room. What do you do with him if this isn't going to work?
Oh, you squeeze him in somewhere else. And I think when you look at the Sounders roster and you looked at where the hole was going to be heading into this year, the center back next to Chad Marshall, that was going to be the spot. So why not try Brad Evans there, right? He's versatile. He's tactically intelligent. He can play pretty much anywhere. So I understand the thought process behind trying him at center back. He actually played center back for Sigurd Schmidt back in the day with the U.S. youth national teams. Has it gone according to plan yet? No. He wasn't good on Saturday night. But I think he was always going to have one of those games as he tries to adjust the position. The key for me, and I think for Seattle, is to see how he responds to it and whether he can take what he needs to take from that game and really establish himself as the right partner for Chad Marshall going forward.
The question is, I think a lot of people will be asking, and certainly Seattle fans will point this out as a factor in their defensive woes, is how important and what kind of difference does Ozzie Alonso make when he comes back in sort of helping to shield Brad Evans a little bit from ending up in those positions where, he's going to get juked out of his pants.
He's everything. Ozzie Alonso makes all the difference for Seattle. And he wasn't particularly missed in that first game against New England because Seattle was just simply so good transitioning from back to front. But you saw how his absence can hurt a team against the Earthquakes. So when he comes back, he's going to make a substantive difference. And I think it's probably best to wait to make a verdict until you see how Evans performs with Alonso in front of him and how the entire team adjusts to having Alonso back in the fold.
On the other side, Dom Kinnear's first win as Earthquakes manager. Did you see anything there was particularly Dom-like? Obviously, Wondolowski capitalizing on some opportunities, and Imagara getting his account opened for them is a good sign. But is there any reason to be able to put San Jose in a box, whether it's playoff contender, also ran, bottom of the conference? Do we have any ideas?
No box yet. I think you have to see how they do at home at Avaya Stadium. I think you have to see how the team sort of comes together, because this is a sort of trademark Earthquakes win. It wasn't really a dominant performance, and nor should it be when they were down at 10 men for a long stretch, but it was very opportunistic. You've got Wondolowski taking chances. You had that real flash of quality between Imagara and John to get the eventual winner. And that's what the Earthquakes have been about. They aren't the team that dictates terms to the run of play, but they can cobble stuff together to take advantage of the opposition when there's a mistake and to take chances when they can create them. So I think all in all, it was a positive night for the Earthquakes that started very poorly, but they were able to put themselves in a position to respond and show the sort of character and grit that they're going to need to get through the season. I'm
going to come to Portland and LA here in a minute, obviously the closing game of the weekend, but I have neglected 2-1-0 wins for Orlando and Houston and Vancouver in Chicago. Chicago looks like they may be the worst team in MLS right now, Kyle, and I don't know if that's going to hold necessarily, but I don't see the signs of life that you would hope to see, especially after some roster turnover was supposed to reinvigorate them.
Chicago looks adrift to me right now. That game against Vancouver on Saturday was terrible. It was just a bad soccer game, and the Fire just, aside from little bits here and there was that one move between Stevens and Shipp that created a chance, and that was fine. But for the large part, the Fire were not good, and they lose to that late goal from Rivero on the poor clearance by Palmer. And there's some work for the Fire to do. But this being said, they're still trying to get everybody together. They don't have a calm yet. Maloney's still settling. Igbonanike is still finding his footing as well. So I think you have to wait a couple of weeks to make a firm judgment about the Fire, but the early returns are not encouraging.
I watched a bit of that game. It was very, very bad. I thought Harry Shipp was, there wasn't a whole lot of help for him. I thought he was relatively okay considering how bad the team was overall. And you mentioned Sean Maloney. There were some thoughts being put out there, perhaps, Kyle, that maybe Maloney underestimated the fitness level needed for MLS. Is that fair at this point?
No, I don't think so. I think the more pressing concern for him is the amount of times the midfield was bypassed. Too many long balls out of the back from Chicago. If Maloney's going to be effective, he needs the ball at his feet. He needs to be able to turn, and he needs to be able to go towards goal. And there weren't enough of those opportunities for him. I'm not concerned about his fitness. I think he'll be fine.
Okay. Orlando with that win in Houston, obviously Tyler Derrick with an absolute gaffe to gift that win to Orlando. Anything to take away from that match for either side?
Not really. That was not a particularly good game either. But Orlando City gets that first win, and they'll always cherish it. And boy, did they get it in really weird fashion. Because Tyler Derrick has had a pretty good 2 weeks across the board, but he is never, ever going to want to watch the replay of that winning goal.
He may have been the best goalkeeper in MLS through 2 weeks, except for that one mistake. And there was some question about whether or not there was a foul on that play. I mean, he was certainly grabbing and trying everything he could to keep that ball out of the net. I don't think that we need any retroactive punishment, do we?
No, I think that goal was punishment enough, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to Portland and LA again, the game that closed out the weekend. Alan Gordon with the late equalizer, for the defending champions. When it comes to Portland, I was obviously wowed by Darlington Nagbe, who I think is going to have a big year. I don't know if that necessarily means goals, Kyle, because that was what we were tracking in all of 2014, and he got one. Is this a setup that's better suited to him? We heard some talk that Caleb Porter's sort of dropping the notion of possession for possession's sake and being more practical.
Darlington Nagbe thrives when he has the ball at his feet and he is able to run into space. And with the Timbers playing as directly as they have over the first 2 weeks, I think it creates opportunities for him to do that. Now, you want to see the end product, and I think you saw a little bit more of that last night. He's a guy who can really make a difference consistently when he's able to find himself in the right positions. The only question for him is, will he give you the end product? And last night he was able to do so.
Well, it certainly helped that Fernando Adi finished a couple of chances for them. At the same time, though, I think at home against the defending champs, the way that game played out, this is one of those draws that's not going to feel very good today.
No, and Timbers have had a lot of experience with draws that don't feel quite great at home over the past 18 months or so. They were in position to win that game, certainly. And when you score as late as Adi did with his second, you want to see out the game. But credit to the Galaxy. They didn't have their best stuff, but they were able to grind through it and get that late equalizer around Gordon to get a point out of it. And that's what the Galaxy do. They find ways to get points on days when they don't have everything that they quite want. And that's why they continue to rest near the top of MLS. Well,
they grinded out a win last week over Chicago in their home opener, and they're grinding out a draw on the road. I mean, nothing wrong with 4 points from 2 matches for the Galaxy, but how long is it going to be a grind?
Well, I think it's going to take a little bit of time to get everybody on the same page, make sure that everything's clicking as they'd like. But the Galaxy are well known for starting seasons slowly. If they're going to do it, they might as well pick up points along the way. So I think the results over the first 2 weeks are fine, and I think they'll get there. It's just a matter of having a little patience and trying to work through the inevitable foibles of life without Landon Donovan and Marcelo Sarvis.
Kyle McCarthy from Fox Soccer, writing over at Inside MLS. Follow that on Twitter, Inside MLS, and follow Kyle at Kyle J. McCarthy. Kyle, appreciate the time and the insight as always. Hopefully we'll have you on maybe next week or a couple weeks from now to talk some more MLS.
Sounds good, my friend. Thanks for having me.
There goes Kyle McCarthy. Good stuff from him as always. Let's focus in on New York City. Rafael Noboa y Rivera from Hudson River Blue will join us in just a minute. Talk about NYCFC's big home debut. Don't go anywhere. Be right back. Every soccer fan in the world knows that the biggest match of the year is El Clasico between Barcelona and Real Madrid. It's your chance to witness Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, and more of the greatest players in the world. The best way to watch is with Dish World and their exclusive broadcast from beIN Sports. Dish World is the #1 live international TV service in the U.S. It's a safe and legal streaming service that delivers your favorite sports and more to your TV, tablet, phone, and computer. For just $10 a month, you can watch El Clasico, plus La Liga, Serie A, and Copa America, as well as the New York Cosmos, Chelsea TV, Arsenal TV, and others with One World Sports and more top networks offered by Dish World. There's no commitment, no annual contract, and no satellite dish needed. Don't miss El Clasico on Sunday, March 22nd. Sign up today at www.dishworld.com. Hey there, it's Jason Davis, and if you're like me and love playing fantasy soccer games, I want to let you know about a fantastic new game called Draft11.com. This is not your usual fantasy soccer game. Draft11.com is different for two major reasons. First, it's a daily fantasy soccer game, and second, it gives you an opportunity to win cash. So instead of playing an entire season and competing against, say, the 3 million people who play Fantasy Premier League and winning nada, you can play Draft11.com over one match day against up to 10 people. And if your team wins, you win. Cash, not points. So go ahead and support our new sponsor that's helping bring Soccer Morning to you every single day. Head over to Draft11.com, sign up for a free account, and take a shot at trying to win some cold, hard cash. Thanks.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we go, back on Soccer Morning, brought to you by World Soccer Talk. Time to talk about New York City Football Club opening up at Yankee Stadium yesterday with a 2-0 win over the New England Revolution. David Villa with a goal, David Villa with an assist, Patrick Mullins on the end of that one. And to talk about it all, a man who was there, Rafael Noboa y Rivera from Hudson River Blue. Raf, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I enjoyed watching that game yesterday. It was an interesting experience on television. Yep. It was a low camera angle. I'm sure you heard plenty of that about that. Obviously, the crowd was large. It was enthusiastic. Maybe they don't quite have the soccer chops yet, Raf, and we can talk about that. But it was a good day for New York and a good debut. Just give me a summation here of how you feel how everything went.
Let's put it this way. 43,507 people went out to see a soccer game in Yankee Stadium. I mean, you could talk about whether or not they have the soccer chops, and that sort of thing, in terms of the chants and the songs and knowing when to cheer and when not to cheer. Let's just get down to the fact that there were 43,507 people catching a soccer game at Yankee Stadium, a mythic venue, and on top of that, it was a loud crowd.
Yes, it was.
Obviously, I'm at the stadium, so I couldn't tell how it came across on TV. But from everything that I saw, everything that I heard, people emailing, IMing, the whole 9 yards, the general consensus was that this was a loud crowd. And this was a crowd that was worthy of being in Yankee Stadium. In talking to players, both Revolution players and New York City players, that was sort of the general consensus, that the crowd made its presence felt, particularly in the second half.
Certainly seemed that way. There was a good New England contingent as well, as you would expect, coming down I-95, and they were loud, and they were giving some stick to New York and the whole where's Frank Lampard situation. Which
absolutely.
Was that's what you want. You want to build a little bit of a rivalry in the region. New York and Boston are certainly no strangers to rivalries. Raf, again, it was sort of, okay, we were all set, not for disaster, but there was a lot of questions over the field surface and whether or not it was going to play well enough for this game. And certainly there was, it was narrow. We kind of knew that going in. You have to try to squeeze a soccer pitch onto a baseball outfield. It's going to be difficult.
Right.
But in the end, I mean, I guess what you could say is everything went off without a relative hitch. Now, 43,507 people out at Yankee Stadium. By the way, new Yankee Stadium. I just want to be a little pedantic about this because
you're totally right, because that is not, in fact, the house that Ruth built.
And everybody's talking about the last time there was a big crowd, the Cosmos played, whoever came over in 1973. Different building, people. That building was across the street. They tore it down. This is a different place. It doesn't take away from the fact that there was a big crowd and they were excited to see soccer there.
Sure.
But then again, they're not going to get 43,000 people out every single time. The field may eventually be a problem. It's certainly going to limit. So, and look, Jason Christ is a guy who likes a narrow 4-4-2 diamond anyway, so maybe this is fine. But it's not ideal. So I guess my question for you, Raf, is when you look at that crowd and when you see the enthusiasm there, will it carry over? Are we going to absolutely see New York City Football Club draw big enough crowds to kind of declare this a success as we then, through the next couple of years, go through the process of the team trying to find a permanent venue?
Here's the thing. This clearly was a historic moment. And there's always the novelty of going out, checking something out, and taking it all in and all that stuff. As you mentioned, the real question is going to happen when they're playing the Colorado Rapids in the middle of July. When they're competing with the New York Yankees, occupying that same stadium. I mean, it's one thing for them to play now when the Yankees are down in spring training and going through that whole set of things. It's going to be a whole nother issue in the middle of July, June, August, what have you. I think it's going to be, much more pronounced next year and the year after, and even the year after that, because let's not have any illusions here. Even if they announce a stadium plan at the end of this season, it's still going to be years before everything is set in place for them to move in, and they are nowhere near close to doing that as we talk right now. So these are all valid questions. I think, this year is a honeymoon year. They're going to go ahead and they're going to draw crowds this year just because of the novelty of it all. I think the other factor, and you can never discount this when discussing New York sports, is if the team is a consistent, proven performer on the field, if they are winning, if they are playing quote unquote attractive soccer, that's also going to make a difference. New York City fans are going to go watch a team that's in contention for a playoff spot, in contention for a league title. They may not necessarily watch a team that, is winless in its last 6 or 7 games.
Right.
And that's the open question. If they can keep up this kind of performance, if they can put together wins and draws and all the rest, that's going to clearly make a difference in terms of the attendance.
Yeah, look, I mean, it was great to see David Villa score the first home goal and then set up Patrick Mullins for the second and be such a gigantic influence in that team. That's why he was paid the big bucks to come over. And you need that hook. I mean, the day out and being part of that crowd is kind of its own reward in a lot of ways.
Sure.
If you've ever been part of a big soccer crowd, I mean, it's intoxicating whether the game's 0-0 or 5-0.
Yeah.
But to see David Villa actually put up that kind of performance in front of that crowd has got to be, he's got to augur well for the future.
Oh, it absolutely does. And, in talking to David after the game and in talking to fans, after the game, at the same time, what was really clear was that the two were feeding off of each other. The same way that you watch, if you've ever gone and seen, a vintage performer like a Bruce Springsteen, play a big crowd, you'd know when a performer is playing to that crowd, and when they're delivering something a little bit extra,
right,
in terms of their performance. And you could definitely see that, particularly in the second half, in terms of David Villa, because you would see him circulating the ball to the other players, and the fans would be screaming out, "Ole, ole, ole!" And so you could clearly see him playing to the crowd, and he admitted as much when I talked to him after the game.
Now, look, they got a draw last week in Orlando to open up the season. You could say it was maybe a bit undeserved. They certainly were not played off the park, but Orlando controlled large swaths of that game. Yesterday, New England had their chances. Let's not say this was a perfect performance by NYCFC. It certainly wasn't. Adam Nemec was a disaster in front of goal, although he did some very nice things in terms of the hold-up play and flick-ons and that kind of thing. But it was a step forward. So what did you see, to get into the analysis of it a bit, what did you see that was different from one week to the next, if anything, and how do they maintain this momentum with David Villa being so key?
Well, here's the thing. The key to New York City here is the midfield. The back line's becoming more and more settled. Now that Shea Facey is here on loan, I think you're going to actually see him start more games, particularly as he gets more acclimated. But really, the midfield is the key here. And there was one key change from last week to this week. Last week, Mehdi Bellucci played in the midfield. This week, Sebastian Velasquez played in his stead. And you could clearly see that New York City's midfield was a lot more fluid in terms of playing within each other and reading off of each other and that sort of thing. There was a lot more east and west passing taking place last week, particularly in terms of mix being involved, and a lot more north-south passing this week. And that bodes well because that means that David Villa is getting more involved in the run of play. And that's what you want because he's a striker and he's going to drop to get the ball, but you don't really want him dropping as much as he was dropping last week in order to get the ball and be able to create things because he's not a midfielder. I think it's a work in progress. They're missing people, particularly if Christ wants to be playing his narrow 4-4-2 diamond. He doesn't have a Kyle Beckerman in this lineup. Andrew Jacobson is lined up in that position right now. He's not a number 6 Beckerman type player. He's more of a number 8 box-to-box midfielder. And he's underrated in that position. So there's two things that are at issue here. A, I think they benefited from the fact that they were playing on a postage stamp. So we'll see what's that like next week against Colorado, playing in altitude, playing in a soccer-specific stadium. The other thing to keep in mind, and I'll circle back to the whole Frank Lampard thing. Frank Lampard is ostensibly coming in the summer. I mean, he signed the contract, he's coming over and that sort of thing. So that in and of itself is also going to have an impact in terms of how New York City play the ball in the summer. And in talking to Claudio Reyna this past week and, after the game, he's been very insistent that they are going to sign a third designated player. And so the suspicion is that third designated player is going to be part of that midfield, whether it's going to be a Daniel De Rossi, essentially serving as Chris's, Beckerman and that sort of thing, or somebody up at the number 10 position, maybe a Wesley Sneijder, somebody like that. Either way, those two players, and I'm just using them as example. I have no information that should lead anybody to believe that New York City is on the verge of signing either, would be a massive upgrade for the midfield.
Sure. Well, okay. I mean, you'd have some issues with moving, not issues, but you would have to move some pieces. I'm assuming that would push Mix out to a wide position.
Absolutely. Yeah. He is much better. Historically, if you look at Mix, he's much better operating off of the shoulder of a number 8, number 6 type midfielder than he is operating centrally, just because he doesn't have the offensive vision in order to be able to lay down the roof the way that the true number 10 would, and set up those killer passes to the forwards like David Villa, like Adam Nemish, or and then he doesn't have the defensive chops in terms of tracking back. He's done a lot better that lately, but that's not his game. It never has been. Well,
you obviously he is going to roam. He's obviously going to cut in, and therefore he's not going to play wide in the sense of a winger type player. So he might work in the diamond. Then I have a question about where Lampard is playing, if there is a De Rossi type player in the lineup, if there is a signing there. So that opens up a question. And then anyway, these are questions for later on. I mean, right now it's you play with what you got. They get a big win. Something that we talked about in the lead up, and there was a lot of negativity, Ref, and that you've been covering it at the blog, and certainly I think we could overdo it a bit. When you have a day like yesterday, washes some of those things away. But I want to come back to some of the restrictions on the fans. Now, look, when you've got 43,000 in the building, maybe those aren't really a concern. But when you're and 15,000 season ticket sales, that's a strong base. But if you're getting 18, 20,000 people into the building on a regular basis, and that's kind of where your high watermark is, not to be able to have the tifos and the signs and to do some of those things. I don't expect flares and the like, but some of those other things that may limit a bit what can be done in terms of the fans.
I think yes and no. I mean, there's definitely a way in which we can look at it and we can say, okay, so you can't have the tifos, you can't do the things that you would have, at a Red Bull Arena, for instance, or at a CenturyLink or at a Providence Park, what have you. And those definitely matter. Absolutely, they do. I think, and I say this as somebody who is not involved in supporters culture in that sense. I think that then opens up um, the horizons for you to be a bit more creative in terms of how you
Interesting.
approach.
I like this. I like it, Raph. I like that attitude. I don't know if it's
No. I think we get into, and I say this as somebody who is a geek, who's who swaps comic books even now with his friends, plays board games and that sort of thing, who's been deeply involved in various fandoms, which is why I tend to be very hesitant about criticizing real fans and that sort of thing. I mean, as somebody who used to be a radio DJ, that debate, that quote unquote debate, drives me up the wall. I don't think that there's such a thing as a real fan. I think if you like something, that you're a real fan. Yeah. But what I'm getting at is that, I think a lot of times, particularly in terms of MLS, we look at the supporter, the big time supporter culture thing, as almost like soccer fan cosplay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We get involved in this sort of rhythm, I'm going to wear my scarf and I'm going to have the tifo and it's all about the tifo and that sort of thing. And you sort of tend to lose sight of the larger thing, which is that you're there to support the team, and you're there to have, a recognizable impact, on the surroundings. I think if you go, for example, to Selhurst Park in Southwest London, to where Crystal Palace plays, they don't have tifos at Selhurst Park. But if you've ever caught a game there, or if you watch it on TV, that is one loud and intimidating place.
Yeah, no, there's absolutely plenty of room for the culture to develop, to incubate in Yankee Stadium, that where all of those accoutrements of the other elements of supporter culture don't necessarily have to follow along.
I will say, to the whole point of the tifos, the fact that they couldn't have an actual tifo in the sense that you would have one set up at Red Bull Arena, did not stop the third rail guys from actually unrolling a tifo of their own. The red, our city, our club, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That was clearly visible.
All right. You know what? I also, and look, I'm not saying that this sort of chanting doesn't happen in other MLS cities. We're going to borrow from other sports, but I did notice that when Kyrie Shelton was coming on as a substitute in the second half, there was a little bit of that bleacher creature name chanting going on for him, which I thought was kind of cool. I mean, I'm not going to be that kind of person who says, "Oh, that's baseball's thing. We shouldn't be doing that." No, you're in the Yankee Stadium. It's part of being a New York fan, and if you happen to root for the Yankees, why not bring it over to NYCFC as well? I mean, there's an obvious connection there, so I can kind of see what you're talking about, Raph. That's good stuff.
Yeah, and I would say, real quick, for as much as we talk about the organic soccer chants, the biggest one for the recent years, I believe I can win.
Yeah,
that was straight up lifted from the Naval Academy.
I know.
From college basketball.
I know.
So,
well,
so it's a little hilarious to hear soccer fans talking about you gotta be organic.
I know. It gets a little inside baseball. No pun intended. Well, actually, yes, exactly. Pun intended.
Totally, that was a great pun.
in about a minute or less here, because I wanted to open up the lines for phone calls today. You obviously you're going to be on have a biased perspective being a New York City FC guy. Yeah. But I saw so much of this from my Twitter follows, people that I know and like, a lot of whining on the Red Bull side of things when it came to the treatment of NYCFC, when it came to Don Garber congratulating New York City on this day and 43,000 and everything else. And I get it. You feel you're a little upset. We've been around for 20 years. Yeah, we play in Jersey, but we're still a New York team. I don't know. From your perspective, I want to tell them to shut up, but I think that's a little cruel. Is there something to be said for the Red Bulls being redheaded stepchild already?
Yeah, no. And here's the thing. I think nobody would deny that NY2, however you define that, okay, has been Don Garber's holy grail since becoming commissioner. And Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a whole lot of that taking place yesterday, in terms of the pregame ceremonies and congratulating him and everybody back patting each other and so on and so forth. And that's fine. Ultimately, though, I think a lot. I think for as much as you want to, say point the finger at MLS, if you want to do that, I think if you're a Red Bull fan, and I don't know that any Red Bulls fans would disagree here. I think the bigger issue is the fact that the team, the actual management of the team, has never really made an affirmative case, until very late on, for why for why the Red Bulls should be considered New York's, team. And that's something that came up over and over and over again as I talked with fans yesterday. I went to a game of Red Bull Arena and I just didn't feel welcome. Or I went to a game at Red Bull Arena and there was just something lacking about the atmosphere. Or I went to a game there and the team has just never really spoken to me,
Yeah.
or reached out to me, or made that emotional connection to me.
Well, okay, that some of that stuff is not necessarily on the Red Bull. Some of that stuff's on those individual fans and how they process everything. And like, I'm not going to call anybody out here. That's not my point. And I'm all in for a rivalry between these two clubs in a very large market that has plenty of room. And throw the Cosmos in too. They're making some waves. They're getting some headlines. Yeah, they play on Long Island in a college stadium, but still there's room there for this to be a very vibrant soccer atmosphere. We joke around with the New York Soccer Wars thing, but it's true to a certain extent. And if I'm running, I'll give you last word here in a second, Ref, but if I'm running the Red Bulls and I'm running their marketing team, man, I am infiltrating NYCFC territory. I'm going around the city, not Jersey. I'm going into the city and I'm doing some guerrilla marketing that can get my name out there a little bit more, set me apart from NYCFC, highlight those differences, whatever they are. You want to just make it about red and blue? Fine, make it about red and blue. That's one of the oldest elements of English soccer. So,
absolutely. And that to me is the thing that's really shocking to me that I just really haven't seen a whole lot of from the Red Bulls and also from the Cosmos. Let me go ahead and I'll elaborate on this real quickly. Look, that's precisely what you want to do. You want to not just emphasize, if you're the Red Bulls, you don't want to just emphasize the fact that you're a New York team. You want to emphasize that history. And to their credit, they've been doing that lately. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Let's give them credit for that. They've been doing that lately, but they need to really amp that up. And I think now that New York City FC is like an actual honest-to-goodness team on the field playing games, I think you're going to see that a lot more. Okay?
Yeah.
From the perspective of the Cosmos, the thing that's always struck me about the Cosmos is just this weird, almost fetishistic call-outs to that 6-7 year period when they had Pele and Beckenbauer and Carlos Alberto and all those players. And it really ignores the really fascinating history of the team prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
You had a guy in Randy Horton, their first big striker back in 1971, they won their first league title, who was legitimately an intimidating, menacing figure in front of goal. And you never hear the Cosmos talk about
we don't have time to go through the whole Cosmos history.
What I'm getting at is that, these are all things that both teams should be playing up, and for whatever reason they haven't yet. And I'm really hoping that the fact that you now have a legit third option in New York City FC, that it now spurs and creates really genuine rivalry.
I hope so.
And on the field and off.
I got a couple of. There's a tweet here from Greg. He says, "Totally unfair to say Red Bull fans are whining. The concern of being marginalized is real. We are not fringe lunatics. I'm not making you out to be lunatics. I just think it's
I'm not calling him. I
know you're not.
I got lots of respect for
Raph, I got a call on the air. Why don't we drop Robert from LA in here real quick before I let you go? Robert, what's up?
Yeah.
Hey, Jason. I wanted to ask you about Minnesota, possibly getting that next expansion spot.
All right, we're taking
do you see the final spot here going to Sacramento or Miami? Because I feel no matter how good Sacramento does, it's not gonna matter compared to David Beckham's name.
No.
Robert,
Can I
Robert,
answer that real quick?
no, because you're here to talk about New York City FC, Rev. I know you're the new expansion kid on the block. Your team kind of popped up in a very different way than the rest of it. Here's what I'm going to do. I didn't realize Robert was going to ask expansion questions. And, Raph, I'd love to keep you around, but we're going to move on. Appreciate the time. Rafael Noboa y Rivera from Hudson River Blue. Let's take a quick break. When I come back, I will keep Robert around, and we will talk about this expansion situation. Take your phone calls, 347-756-6276. Soccer Morning, brought to you by World Soccer Talk. Be right back.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on World Soccer Talk with Jason Davis.
Here we are back on Soccer Morning. I'm on the phone with Robert from LA, who called in to ask about the expansion situation in MLS. Came up on the ESPN broadcast yesterday. All signs point to Minnesota United getting an MLS bid, working to put a stadium in downtown Minneapolis. And Robert, your question, I'm going to restate your question for you. If I'm wrong, tell me. With Minnesota United seeming like a lock, you think that Miami might jump over Sacramento if Beckham can get his crap together? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, because because Garber's been talking about it, and he's already been there. He had like that photo op of him holding the T-shirt of Miami, and he hasn't gone to Sacramento. I know they sent some like executives, but I just feel that it's gonna go to Miami, no matter all the good things that Sacramento can do.
Look, I think that would be, obviously we would call that unfair. Now, MLS has twisted and turned their expansion rules, the expansion criteria several different times. I don't think they apply anymore, and I think you should stop worrying about whether or not they apply anymore. That being said, I think it would be a travesty if Sacramento doesn't get rewarded with a team. And also, I don't know that Beckham's anywhere near getting his crap together. And there's also no prescription against MLS going past the number of teams that they've said, 24 teams or whatever. I mean, if Beckham is ready, MLS will go to Miami. I have no doubts about that. I don't know that necessarily means Sacramento gets left out, though. And I appreciate the call, Robert. I can move on. Washington's on the line. Washington, you were out at the stadium yesterday.
Jason? How you doing, man?
I'm good. You were out at the stadium yesterday, right?
Yes, I was. I loved it. I mean, I waited 20 years for this. The performance and the atmosphere made it worth every second of the wait because I loved it. I had a great time. There are two things I want to talk to you about, though. One is, just because I loved it yesterday doesn't make me any less passionate of the fact that we need our own stadium.
Okay.
I mean, and one of the things yesterday, there were a couple of questionable offside calls, and I honestly believe this. I think the ref made those calls because the landmarks for him were off because we were playing on a slanted field.
You know what, Washington? Taylor Twellman made that exact point on the broadcast. Taylor Twellman said that exact same thing, and I think you're probably right.
Well, there you go. The other thing that I want to ask you, I actually want to ask you this, because yesterday was a good flow for David Villa. It was like he was the star. Everybody played to him, and he did his part, and he played to the rest of the team and to the crowd. And that's great. I love that. I'm just worried, and I wonder if you can tell me if you think I'm like to be worried or not. When Frank Lampard shows up, Is it going to be, okay, well, now there's two of us, let's play together, let's get this done? Or is it going to be, well, who's is bigger, and that rivalry is going to bring negativity to the field?
No, I honestly don't think that Villa's that type of personality. I mean, he obviously played to the fans yesterday, put on a show. I don't think you're going to have, like, who's the BMOC in New York. I don't think that's going to be a thing, Washington. I think you'll probably be fine. Don't worry about that too much.
All right, thanks a lot, Jason.
Appreciate
I
it.
love the show. I'll continue to watch.
All right, they're both getting paid, right? I mean, they're both going to be big stars. I don't think it's an issue. 417, you're on the air.
Yes. Good morning. This is Al speaking from Springfield, Missouri.
What's up, Al?
And doing fine. I wanted to question about the New York Cosmos and their stadium situation, plus the New York FC team. It was reported that at the end that Don Garber may have sabotaged it and everything. That's the rumors going on. But are they still going to have a stadium for the Cosmos, or
okay?
Is that issue?
I'll tell you what I know, and we talked about this with Dave Martinez last week. Actually, that was, I think, the Friday's episode, Al. So if you missed that, go back and listen to it. I asked Dave Martinez specifically what the situation was with the Cosmos Stadium. He said as far as he knew, there was no movement. They had maybe expected something to come down in January and did not. As for the rumors / report that, as you put it, Don Garber sabotaged the stadium, I think that there may be a possibility, and I don't have confirmation about this, and that's why I'm not saying it flat out, and Dave Martinez of Empire of Soccer is looking into it. There may be a possibility that MLS has lobbied against the Cosmos getting a stadium, partly because that would hurt NYCFC's chances of getting a stadium in the general stadium fatigue type of sense. I don't know what bodies, governing bodies, are in charge of the differences between those things. I don't know whether to be any crossover between a Cosmos stadium and an NYCFC stadium in terms of who has to approve it, who has to pass bills, and all of those things. I don't know that sabotage is the right word, and I think that if you're being honest about this, if MLS is protecting their interests, then them lobbying against a Cosmos stadium is probably par for the course. And if there was a chance that the Cosmos were going to lose out on a stadium because of MLS, I guarantee you they would lobby in the same way.
True.
All right.
Because I can see the possibility of a new stadium up in upstate New York now, with the New York Islanders no longer playing at the arena there.
I think there's a lot of possibilities. How long and how far they'll have to go to get there is an open question. Thanks for the call, Al. I appreciate it. 312, you're on the air.
Hey, this is Andrew from Chicago.
What's going on?
I just wanted to call in to completely disagree with Kyle McCarthy.
What about what? About the fire?
Yeah, about the fire. Basically, he was saying, and I've heard this from many sources, that basically they just need time to get together. But I just think I don't know. It's really hard as a fan because we saw this last season where they were just so poor. But I mean, look at New York City and Orlando. These are new teams. Where's their time to get together? They both crushed this weekend. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm totally kind of lost. And
no, I'm with you. I'm with you. I think that patience has got to be running out in Chicago. Clearly, Hotman and the ownership has decided that the best way for them to operate this club is in sort of a middle class area. I mean, they smack of the Union in that way. They don't bring in a big coaching name. Okay, Frank Gallup is one thing. He knows this league. That's fine. But you bring in players who may be good, maybe okay, maybe could thrive in MLS eventually, but are not on the level of what an NYCFC is bringing in, or even I don't know, even New England with Jermaine Jones and Juan Agudelo. So I understand why you would be frustrated. And I don't know. I mean, you can't count on Mike McGee to catch lightning in a bottle and score 25 goals. You can't count. Go ahead.
That's the thing, Jason. Sorry to interrupt, but I just don't get it. They brought in 3 DPs, right? So I don't know what. I mean, you look at these other teams. I mean, the Crew. They're always talked down to how they're this smaller market. They're doing it. And so what is the solution for a team like Chicago?
A couple of things that
a bigger market, but they just bring in these random guys who just don't seem to be doing anything.
Yeah, a couple of things about the difference in Columbus and Chicago that I think are interesting is Columbus found, and they've obviously made a habit of this because they had Guillermo Barros Schelotto. They bring in Federico Higuain to be that playmaker, to be that influential player in the middle of the field, and then they sort of build around him. And now they've got Greg Berhalter, who has brought I'm going to say a stylistic wrinkle to MLS in terms of what he wants to do with that team and how he plays. And for a while last year, it was working really well. Then it didn't work for a while, but they've actually, they managed to find a kind of a happy middle ground. And you add Kai Kamara to that mix, and maybe they are a contender. Whereas Chicago they just continue to kind of scramble for a name, a guy who can be consistent enough, who can find his legs. You don't have that Higuain-like figure in Chicago. Maybe that's the key, or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a tactical wrinkle. I don't know, Andrew.
Well, there was all this Jermaine Jones, man. I mean, the whole Jermaine Jones saga, and I didn't believe in it when it happened. I didn't think he'd be that good. But then when you see New England, he actually made an impact. So is it just a matter of buying instead of fooling around with all these like random third-tier DP, just buying a single DP that can do something?
I don't know. I don't know.
Orlando and New York, that they actually, they don't have all their guys yet, but they have these one key players, and they can build around.
Yeah, but at the same time, look, Andrew. At the same time, thanks for the call, man. At the same time, FC Dallas is doing it without that big name DP. They're doing it with some other guys, maybe not third tier, but the reason they're not third tier is because they've made a name for themselves in MLS and proven that they can play. I don't know. It's got to be a rough time in Chicago. They have Chicago as a franchise has sort of been left behind just a little bit, not only because they haven't been as proactive as they need to be in terms of their coaching situation, in terms of the players that they sign. Maybe they're cheap, although I'm not sure that that's the right label, but they're certainly not living up to the market size of Chicago. So that doesn't match up. And then you have, that stadium's out in Bridgeview, and I haven't been there, so I'm not going to make any broad judgments here. But when you have teams getting their buildings in these urban centers, downtown, lots of vibrant atmosphere, I think teams like Colorado, Chicago, FC Dallas to a point, although Oscar Pereira has proven that he's a really, really good coach, and they've made some good signings. I don't know. I don't think there's obviously not a overriding catch-all formula that works for everybody. You just got to keep working at it. 347-756. Actually, no, we're out of time, aren't we? I was going to give the phone number out. I think I missed somebody's phone call, but let's go ahead and wrap up this edition of Soccer Morning on a Monday. Thanks again to Kyle McCarthy from Fox Soccer for joining us. Rafael Noboa y Rivera from Hudson River Blue. Make sure you check out his work over at SB Nation as he covers NYCFC. They're actually playing games now. He can finally write about games. Fantastic stuff. Also, draft11.com, sponsor of the show. Very fun daily fantasy games over there. Single match day fantasy games. Very cool. And make sure you're checking out Dish World. Seriously, it's a fantastic service. Not only do you get BN Sport, which is where you can see La Liga, Serie A, and a bunch of other soccer games. You also have One World Sports, which is where the New York Cosmos play on television, and there's a bunch of other stuff. I mean, international television available at your fingertips. All right, I'm out of here. It's good discussion. I'm sorry if I offended any of you Red Bull fans. Maybe we can carry that over tomorrow. If you pay 4 months up front, you get a free Roku stick for 50%. Or 50% off Roku 3. So there you go. Trevor's hooking it up. Talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.